Hello and welcome to another episode of the Leo Alves podcast. And in today's podcast, I have a lovely guest with me, Angela. I won't say too much. Dr. Genoni, maybe I should say. I
Yeah.
won't say too, I won't say too much. I'll let her introduce herself. So maybe you can say who you are, what you do, and then we can go from there.
Sounds good. My name is Angela. Thanks for the intro, Leo. And I am a nutritionist, but I have a very strong interest in the gut microbiome. I have a PhD in the gut microbiome space. So I quite literally do know my, shit, as you might want to say. It's on the back of my shirt, actually, which is part of my branding. So yeah, it's good for a bit of a laugh.
Yeah, nice. And so how did you get into gut health specifically?
So that part of the process was a bit of an accident, actually. I've been a nutritionist my whole working career, but when my kids were little, I wanted to go back and do a PhD because it was a good way for me to upskill and get back to the workforce after having kids. And I kind of accidentally ended up in the gut health space. I did a small project for an honours degree, and the people that were in that study had gut effects. And so my supervisor at the time suggested, why don't you look at the gut for your PhD? And I was a little nervous, to be honest, because I knew that it meant that I'd be in the lab for several years with poop samples. But it was one of the most fun things that I've ever done. And I learned so much. And now I get to do this for a job. So I'm not complaining at all.
And you're based in Australia, right?
Yes, I'm on the west coast of Australia and the sunny side, I think you might call it,
Oh,
with the
nice.
nice beaches over this part of Australia.
I've never been. I'd love to visit someday. So okay, yeah, all of that is really interesting, and props to you for finishing a PhD, which not many people manage to accomplish. So it's very impressive. Um, and I guess to get stuck straight into the more main parts of the conversation, maybe things that people are always wondering about, but I guess they don't know where to go often is so we could say what are the most common gut symptoms people ignore that maybe they should pay attention to that they're not really thinking about or you find most people don't often think about.
So I think the main thing people don't realize with the gut is that it's not just about having gut issues. Like, yes, I see a lot of people with IBS and we work with those symptoms to try and get them under control. But you can have all sorts of symptoms throughout your whole body. And in fact, those are signals that the gut microbiome is off. And you're not necessarily getting gut symptoms though, but it is a symptom of having a disrupted gut microbiome. So anything from like, brain fog to having chronic inflammation, those things are true signals that your gut microbiome is not regulating things properly. And we might not consider that it's the gut, but yeah, once we look at what the diet's like and what the microbiome might be doing, then we can start to get to the bottom of it. And in most cases, the microbiome does down-regulate and can fix a lot of those things without too much hassle.
Okay, and so it can arise in other ways that isn't just within the gut.
Yeah, absolutely. You can like the gut microbiome is linked with just about any health condition that you could have a look on PubMed for. You can find some links with the gut microbiome. So even things like cardiovascular disease, like you would not immediately think that that has a link with the gut microbiome, but there are some strong links between the gut microbiome and cardiovascular disease. And yes, they're mediated by your diet, but the gut microbiome is the piece in the middle that helps put the pieces together.
Okay, and this is probably going to be quite a broad diet, but this is going to be quite a broad question, but um, you mentioned that diet can have a big impact on it.
Yeah.
How much would you say other factors play a role? Um, and maybe like, and how strong would those factors be? Maybe like, would you say genetics can play a role in those cases? And if so, like, maybe how much? And maybe if there's other factors that play there too.
Yeah. I think research tells us that diet is the biggest driver of gut microbiome composition because obviously it makes sense where they're bacteria that are in there, and once you feed them, the populations can grow. So that's a no-brainer part of the equation. But there's lots of other things as well. There's exercise. So you might not think that exercise can influence your microbiome, but exercise can significantly improve your microbiome diversity. So there's that. We've also got things like stress. So your gut-brain axis can change your microbiome composition. And we might think about that those connections go the other way. Your diet can influence your gut-brain axis, but yes, it goes the other way too. If you're stressed out, you can do things in the reverse way. And then, of course, we've got your environment. So, what is the bacterial load that you're exposed to? How much nature are you exposed to? And what other people are you around? And then we have things like medications and supplements, and they can all play a big role in your gut microbiome composition. And then finally, genetics, obviously, as well, because genetics can change the way that our food moves through our system, so our transit time, and just all of our enzyme pathways, which can change what ends up in the colon to provide food for the bacteria. So, whilst diet is the biggest factor, it's not the only factor. And certainly, if people are struggling with their gut, then you kind of need to work on all of the areas at once because diet might not be enough to fix it.
Okay. And I think this actually brings up another question that I did have in mind, and and I'm sure you have so many there's so many things you see, but I wanted to ask, what is one common, or you could name more than one, common like gut health myth that you just see time and time again, and you're just thinking, I wish people would stop believing this.
I guess the common ones at the moment on the socials are that you don't need fiber, like fiber's optional. And that one is just like, yeah, I just almost want to put my head on the desk and give up for the day when I see that one because it's so far from what the literature says and the body of evidence says about how we should be looking after our microbiome that it just shows a complete lack of understanding for human physiology. So there's that one. We do need fiber and we need more of it. And it's kind of the problem with our Western society is that we're not eating enough fiber. So there's that one. And then there's one that sort of hangs around from, 5 or 10 years ago, and that is that fruit has too much sugar and that we should be, limiting our consumption of fruit. And that one is also pretty incorrect because fruits are, firstly, they're good sources of fiber, but the colored compounds in fruit provide a lot of polyphenols and other nice compounds, which are hugely beneficial for our whole body, not just our gut. And fruit is nice. Fruit is joyous. Fruit is part of the joy of eating food. So, and we see people who eat more fruit have better blood sugar control. So there isn't any argument to the equation that fruit is bad for us in any way, shape, or form.
Yeah, I absolutely love fruit, so that's always good to hear.
Yep.
In regard to well, we can speak about both points in a bit more depth because I would love to as well. So the first point you mentioned about fiber, um, that's probably got a lot to do with the rise of the carnivore diet gaining popularity.
Mm.
It does always blow my mind when they just say that fiber isn't I think they say their argument is typically fiber isn't necessary or compulsory or you don't have to have it, which is something I do often see. I think I think in quite a few years down the line, where because I would say I don't think it's unfair to say that its popularity has really exploded recently, the carnivore diet, in
Mm.
the last few years. So I think as time goes on and the years go by, I think there will start to be a much more well, we already know a lot of the adverse health effects, but I think it's going to become undeniable as more people do it, and then I think more people realize, oh, whoa, this actually wasn't a good idea because of the negative health effects I'm seeing now. Um, I And I would love to know what you say to the people who are often pushing for the carnivore diet, where their argument is typically, I'm not saying this, not at all, and I don't agree with it, but their argument is typically, oh, we should be eating more like our ancestors did, because back then we didn't have as many issues and problems as we do today, and obesity wasn't like as out of control in their terms as it is today, and so we should be striving to eat more like our ancestors did, and that's why we don't need fiber.
Yeah, and there's so many holes you can put in that argument because in, back in Paleolithic times, and in fact, my whole PhD thesis was on low carb diets. So I'm quite well armed with the science in this space to argue with anyone who wants to argue with me. But our ancestors, they ate what they could get their hands on. They whatever season it was, wherever their geographical location was, whether it was nuts or berries or root vegetables or whatever they could hunt, they would have eaten. And part of the research on more traditional hunter-gatherer type lifestyles does show that they did eat a lot of fiber because a lot of their diet was comprised of things that they could forage, which would have been nuts and seeds and berries. So the argument that they didn't have any fiber is kind of quite false, unless you're an Inuit Eskimo who only lived on, seals and things that were meat and fat. Um, but then again, paleo people didn't live that long and their life expectancy was not great. So if they were going to develop heart disease, they didn't live long enough to develop heart disease or to develop the implications from a long-term diet devoid of fiber. Not that they didn't have enough fiber. I think the evidence is quite clear that they did have enough fiber. And then you've got the argument that it's fiber's not necessary. And I think they're kind of right, but they've kind of missed the point of human physiology in that our human cells can't break down fiber. We lack the enzymes to do that in our small intestine. And we know that, science is very clear on that. But the bacteria in our colon, they have the enzymes to do that. And we've developed this symbiotic relationship with the microbes in our colon to help us. So in return for giving them fiber, they break down the fibers into carbohydrates and they can use those for their energy. And in return, they produce a whole host of beneficial compounds which travel far and wide throughout our body and downregulate inflammation and produce a whole host of health benefits for us. So I just can't see any positive to the argument that you don't need fiber. There just isn't one.
Yeah, I honestly fail to see it as well.
Yeah.
Um, and of course you make brilliant points. And there is the occasional argument I see, which is like often anecdotal, is because I've had the odd comment from people who will say, "Oh, I did the carnivore diet and my health has improved tremendously." And these have been few and far between, but it has been, I've had it occasionally enough where I've been like, okay, I'm starting to pick up on what's going on here. And it's usually someone who is maybe very overweight and then what happens is, and I think this is important to mention because it is to do with the carnivore diet, and I don't want people to mistake, oh, this is what they have to do then. It's that someone who's usually very overweight, and then they go on the carnivore, and because they've cut out entire food groups, they've then lost a lot of body fat. So what they've
Mm.
then seen isn't the health benefits from the carnivore diet per se, it's the health benefits from losing a lot of body fat. And
Yes, exactly. And we can't discount that. When we do scientific research, we statistically adjust our results to account for the weight loss so that when we're looking at our findings, we can say, okay, a portion of what we're seeing here is due to the weight loss, and a portion is actually what could be the true effect of this dietary intervention. And once we account for weight loss, those benefits often disappear. So you're totally right. And the other thing that people do when they go on carnivore diets is they cut out ultra processed foods. And the stuff in the packets, and we can't underestimate the effect that that has on our gut and our overall health. So that's probably another factor at play contributing to their reported, they're feeling better. And the other thing that could be happening is that they did have a disrupted gut, and by cutting out everything and sort of um, not feeding the microbes in the gut, they've reduced the overall microbial load in the colon by not feeding them, and that has reduced their symptoms. Does that mean that that is beneficial long term? Absolutely not. It just means in the short term, they've alleviated some symptoms. And if it works for them for weight loss, that's fine. But after they've lost the weight, we need to get them back on a healthy diet, which is feeding the microbes. Otherwise, we're going to head into territory where it might not be so beneficial in the longer term. So I guess if someone is, desperately wanting to try carnivore, I would, try and talk them out of it for a start. But if they do want to try it, then it's like, okay, short term only.
Yeah, because it's always that thought that does come to my mind, um, with this type of comment. It's like, well, yeah, like I said, it's more because the health benefits are more because you've lost a lot of body fat.
Yeah,
But there's no
yeah.
doubt that if you continue to do this diet for long enough, then you're going to start seeing the adverse health effects from doing carnivore and chronically excluding lots of fiber, lots of
Mm.
vitamins and minerals from the vegetables, the salads and the fruit that you're not eating. So yeah, I think that's it was quite good to just get that out there. And then in regard to fruit as well, people are often you were mentioning that people often cut that out because they're more worried about the sugar in fruit
Sugars. Yeah, yeah.
and not so much focusing on the fiber. Do you think because I agree with you 100%. Do you where do you think I was gonna say, do you think there is any sort of leg to stand on here with this point?
No, I guess the whole when we started exploring diabetes, and yes, we do need to be careful of our added sugar consumption. So I think part of the issue with fruit and the way that it's been demonized is because of the sugar content and, the whole explosion of the population who's got type 2 diabetes. And once you've got diabetes, you you do need to be a bit careful with your carbohydrate intake in one go. But if you're well managed and you're eating a good amount of fiber, then having fruit in your diet can actually improve your glucose control. And it is simply because your gut microbes are working better, and the whole feedback loop between glucose uptake and insulin secretion, and that whole process works better when you've got well-fed microbes. So if you're feeding them fruit, then you're going to have better outcomes at the end of the day. And I guess there are only some exceptions there if you've got type 1 diabetes, where it is critical to manage your blood sugar, and your pancreas has no say in producing insulin to help you with that process. So I am putting a caveat on people with type 1 diabetes, and they already know very well how to manage their own blood sugar levels, I'm sure, without me sprouting on about fruit. But for the rest of the population, it's quite important to include fruit.
Yeah. I would love to ask as well, what can someone learn about their gut health, their own gut health, just by looking at their daily bowel movements? And what do you think are some of the red flags people should never ignore?
Yeah, so I guess and I haven't got one here with me. Oh, actually I might do. I might have one here with me. I These are actually part of my business cards, but here's a Bristol stool chart. So the shape and form of your stool is actually a pretty good marker for the overall health of your gut. And we are aiming for like an easily passed, smooth stool at least once a day. So around that 22 hours or between 18 and 22 hours is correlated with a better gut microbiome composition than longer or shorter. So the amount of time that the food spends in the colon is really important because you don't want food hanging around in there too long because you have more chance of some of the more toxic metabolites doing damage. But then again, you don't want it in there for too quick either, because it means that you are not likely to be having adequate fermentation occurring, which means you can't absorb all of the beneficial byproducts from the fermentation that's happening in there. So it's a fine balance of, we need a happy medium in between that. Yeah, you don't want it too fast or too slow. So if your stool sample is too hard, then it probably means you haven't had enough water or fiber or both. And if it's too runny, then you may have eaten too much fiber in one go. You might be lactose intolerant, for example. Or if it's an ongoing problem, I straight away send people off to the doctor to get checked first, because it could be a symptom of you're not absorbing enough in your small intestine. It could mean that things are not quite working well. We need to get some things ruled out before I would work with someone if they've got chronically loose stools. So that's one of the red flags.
Okay. Okay. Yeah, that's yeah, very interesting. I don't think it's something that many people put thought toward typically.
Yeah, I agree. We sort of get used to what's normal for us, but we don't always think about what the implications of that might be for the health of our microbes. So it's good. And that's why I make like lots of jokes about poop, because it kind of it breaks the ice a little bit and it helps people be more comfortable to talk about it. And we can all have a joke about it. I have got three teenage boys, so it's always a bit of a laugh in my house when we're talking about it. But it's kind of important. If we're talking about having better microbiome health, we need to talk about this stuff more.
And it is a valid form. Would you say it's a valid form of feedback to
Yeah, it is. It's a crude marker, but it's there is a correlation there, and numerous studies have shown that the shape and form and the transit time of your stool is a good marker for your overall health of your microbiome. So we do still use it in research. When we're collecting stool samples, we get patients to report what their Bristol stool number was when we're collecting samples, because the amount and type of bacteria that we see, we do need to use a statistical adjustment for transit time, because that's the only way sometimes we can tell the difference between samples.
and if someone, let's say someone wanted to improve their gut health starting from today, what do
Mhm.
you think, or what would you say are three simple habits that they could start to think about implementing that would help with that?
Yeah. So this is a good one, because I think, and this is on social media a lot. You see a lot of, extreme diets or detoxes or resets or whatever you want to call them. But if you want to actually have longer term healthier gut microbiome, the best way to do that is to make changes very slowly. And the reason that I am so passionate about advocating for smaller, slower changes is because it is more sustainable. We're all busy, and the time in your life when you start having gut issues, or the time where you want to start focusing on your gut microbiome, is usually when you get to middle age, or you're in your 30s or your 40s. And when we're in our 30s or we're 40s, it's a busy time of life. We've often got young families, work is busy, we've got mortgages, we've got stress. So having some kind of extreme diet at that point of it in our life can be quite degrading to our confidence, because it's very difficult to stick to something like that when you're at that stage of your busy life. So focusing on small changes is my number one tip for improving gut health. Now, your gut bacteria can change very rapidly, and science tells us that within 3 or 5 days, we can completely reshape the microbiome. But it doesn't mean that that's going to be comfortable if you do that. If you clean out your whole pantry and then suddenly start eating 60 grams of fiber a day, you will feel that. It will be mighty uncomfortable for a week or two. So just because it can adjust quickly doesn't mean we should do it quickly, because mentally that's not really going to work for most people. And then the second thing is to just don't restrict yourself, add in more healthier fiber containing foods rather than trying to subtract stuff to start with, because you will start noticing that you're feeling better, and that will build some more positive changes coming through. And then the third tip, you have to sort of look at where you're at with what fiber you're eating already, and then add in something that's not in your current routine. So if you don't eat much fruit, then what you need to be adding in is a piece of fruit. So it's quite simple. You just need to be quite strategic and gut focused with the things that you change. And if you do it slowly and stack them on each other, then you're more likely to be successful.
And someone listening to this right now might be thinking, those are all very good points, but what about something as easy as taking a supplement? Because there's a lot of gut supplements marketed
Yeah.
right now, and I'm sure the listener and myself would love to hear your opinion on those.
Yeah. So I talk about I've just published a book actually, and I haven't got it here with
Oh,
me, but
nice.
the in my book I talk about supplements because it is a massive growth industry at the moment. Anything with a gut label on it is heavily marketed. You've got marketing teams producing these beautiful packages of supplements, and they've got, little spoons in them or shakers or whatever, and they look so beautiful, but they cost, $100, and you need a 6-month subscription to buy them. Now, I guess my problem with supplements is that there has been quite a few research studies come out in the last year or two, which has shown that some supplements and drugs leave lasting signatures on the gut microbiome. So that's the first thing. When we researching and developing some of these supplements, we don't often look at the microbiome. We might look at impact on something else. And so we don't even think about what the effect on the microbiome might be from this supplement that we're developing. So taking these things blindly without considering what the long-term effect on our gut is a little bit short-sighted. It's such a complex ecosystem in there that I think we really need to be more cautious about what we're taking and what we are sort of blindly consuming, because we don't know what the effect of our gut bugs are going to be for half of these things that are on the market. So that is my word of advice, is for 99% of those things, you don't need them, and we can take a food approach to fixing your gut without needing those supplements. In terms of fiber supplements, it can be a slightly different story, because we can use gut fiber supplements strategically for patients with IBS, for example. But fiber supplements really don't replace a diet strategy, because a fiber supplement doesn't also contain the polyphenols that were found in the food. It doesn't have that complex food matrix that the fiber came from. So I think it's important to remember that taking anything in isolation might have an impact that we don't quite understand yet.
So would you say for most people, they're probably better off not at least starting with those gut health supplements? Well,
Yeah,
supplements that are
if
marketed for them.
if you are starting out with gut health, then definitely stay away from supplements unless they are medically prescribed. And if you've got IBS and you've got a medical management team, then sometimes they can be quite strategic with your, improvements. But I would only ever put clients on them on a one-on-one basis after we've talked about all the things that are going on and what we can do about their specific gut symptoms. We need to be more in control of our diet first before we delve into the supplement category.
Yeah, and I would say
And you can
that
save a
kind
bucket load of money too.
absolutely. And
Yeah,
yeah, I think that point, what you just said there about looking at diet first before going for supplements, I think pretty much stands true for not just gut health supplements, but nearly all supplements.
yeah,
Again, unless they're
exactly.
medically diagnosed,
Yeah,
because that is often the case. Most people, when they're starting out on a fitness journey, they're often their first thought is to, oh, which supplements can I get?
yeah.
And more often than not, that's probably not going to make as big of a difference, and in fact, probably quite a minor one if maybe habits with nutrition or exercise haven't really changed. Um, I
Absolutely.
wanted. Oh, did you have anything else you wanted to say about it before I have the next
No,
question?
no, no,
So,
that's all.
this is kind of to draw back on an earlier point we made where we were discussing
Mhm.
fat loss as well. I would love to know, and maybe the listener is quite curious about this. So, okay, say like I want to, someone's listening, and they're thinking I want to improve my gut health, but I also have a specific health goal of body fat loss. Is there something different or something I would have to do or something I would have to think about differently if my goal is to simultaneously lose body fat while improving gut health, or would the approach be the same?
I think the approach would generally be the same because gut health often improves when you lose body fat anyway, because everything else tends to improve as body fat decreases, particularly when you've been in that risky category and then you start heading back to a more normal body fat ratio. But I think it is for the listeners out there, I think understanding your digestive system and having an appreciation for the power of the microbiome does somewhat give you back your confidence with your diet and your body just by itself. Because once you start to see the wonder of what's on the inside, you can have a bit more of an appreciation for the engineering of the wonderful piece of equipment that you're in charge of, which is your body. And I personally don't like to focus on weight because I think being healthy on the inside and having a healthy mindset is the foundation for that. And then weight often follows suit once we get all of that stuff in order.
Yeah, yeah. And I would love to. I think the last question I had for today was there anything that we didn't discuss that you'd love to mention that you think is very important for the listener to know as well?
Yeah, I think there's a lot on social media around women's health at the moment and cortisol and bone density and hormones and all of that. And there's so much misinformation out there in that space. And I think a lot of the gut supplements are aimed at women who are in that time of their life. And at this point in, any woman's life, this is the time when focusing on the gut can make the most difference because your bone density, for an example, is supported by having a healthy gut microbiome. And people don't make that connection very readily, and it's not really that well explored on socials, is that your microbiome plays a big role in the rate of bone breakdown. So if you've got a healthier gut, then you're going to have um, a healthier bones as we get older, and that flows on to how your body regulates hormones and your stress hormones. All of that is part of the process, and taking a diet first approach with that is so much easier and less stressful than going down all of the rabbit holes on social media.
You mentioned the amount of misinformation nowadays on social media, which is very true. Do you have tips for the listener who's maybe thinking, they want to learn more about this. They're just starting out. They don't know too much, so they don't know who to listen to. Do you have any tips for someone who's maybe thinking, okay, but how do I know who is a good source and who is just spreading misinformation? Do you have anything specific you look
Uh,
for?
that's a tough one. I guess once you've shown an interest in like gut health, then your social feeds end up being a whole pile of gut health, and some of that could be good and some of it could be bad. Um, And yeah, and then within each field, sometimes even professionals will have a slightly different interpretation of the literature. And but I guess science as a whole is about putting the evidence together in a story. So putting all the research together to tell the story. And so finding an expert who is good at putting the story together, but doing it in a way that's kind of open to new information is really important, because sometimes the people that are so fixed with their mindset or views on things, that's kind of a red flag for me, that they're not open-minded enough to consider that there might be new evidence coming out to perhaps change their opinion. And I guess that's one of the things that I love about what I do, is just reading new papers and exploring and challenging those beliefs as I get older and I see new stuff coming out, is having that open mind. So people who are so confident or arrogant is often the biggest red flag for the information on social media.
Yeah, I agree. I think sometimes you can spot them when they often make very like blanket statements
Yeah,
with a lot of
yeah,
confidence and
yeah,
not really any nuance
yes,
and they're like, this is 100% undeniably the way. Maybe is it going to work 100% of the time? No, but I would say very often you can you know suss someone out like that. So I
yeah.
very much
I
agree with
think
you.
that I think that the actual experts are never that confident with our knowledge,
Yeah.
because we know what we don't know. We just have that awareness that we know a lot, but we also don't know a lot. And that means we're never so confident with what we say on socials, because it's even more important to not be that confident on socials, because we're talking to so many people. How can we make a statement that is applicable to everyone? We can't. So we have to make sure we put all those nuances in there.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. And no, exactly. I and you mentioned this actually did bring up another question to my mind. You mentioned that as, research comes out, and you like to find out, oh, maybe, oh, I didn't actually realize, X, Y, and Z was maybe like that. So, and you're always learning new things and
Mm.
having maybe your beliefs changed and adjusted. Is there something maybe, I don't know, within the last year or two where you have really changed your opinion and thoughts on, whereas before maybe you thought about it in one way, but as you've gained more experience and maybe more research has come out, you now think about it quite differently.
Yeah, I think, well, the best example I can give of that is my own PhD. Like, I went into my PhD research, looking at lower carb diets, because at the time they were the new thing, and there was some kind of exciting research that indicated that maybe they might be helpful, or that they might be good for people to adhere to over the longer term. But as I did my PhD and talked to the people that participated in my research study, and then analysed all the data, and then more research comes out over the 10 years that's followed, I I don't share those opinions on, lower carb diets anymore, because yeah, the evidence has changed. The evidence shows us that the more fiber we eat, the better. And I'm happy to, 5 or 10 new papers come out, challenge my opinions on something, then yeah, I'll revisit what I'm thinking. But it's good. That learning process is part of the journey.
Yeah, exactly, 100%. And yeah, and anyone who's often quite stuck in their ways, as we said, is probably going to, someone that maybe is spreading misinformation because yeah, new research is always coming out. Um,
Yep.
but otherwise, yeah, thank you very much for coming on today. I cannot appreciate, I know it's late in Australia right now, quite late. So yeah, thank you for making time to come on. It was a very fun conversation for the listener and even myself. I was really looking forward to having this chat because gut health isn't something I speak about too much. So I was excited to learn more. And I've been seeing you post on Threads a lot, and it's been good. It's been fun to see you, tackle misinformation yourself on there because misinformation gets called out quite quickly on Threads, and I'm all for that. And as someone who I see a lot of gut health misinformation on threads as well, and I'll see you there, gut health specialist here. It's not like that. It's like that's not what we know. This is what we know, and I see you, just giving people a heads up, a friendly heads up, and I can very much appreciate what you've been doing. So, yeah, I've been. It's been great to see. Where can people find you?
So I will perhaps send you my website link. It's gutscience.au is my website link. And if your listeners are interested in one of my programs or my new book, then they can purchase that straight from the website as well. And I'm just about to launch a new gut microbiome short course in the next few days also, which is might be interesting for some of the listeners who don't want to read a book, but might want some information they can listen to on the go.
Those are all amazing. Send me the links for those things, and I'll put all of
Yep.
them in the show notes of this podcast episode. Would you say Threads is probably the social media platform you use the most?
Yeah, I love threads. I don't know about you, but yeah, just
Me
because it's
too.
text based, it's easy for me to post regularly because I don't have to create some graphics or film a reel. Um, but yeah, threads is my platform of choice. I think it's really hard to call out misinformation on the video format
It
socials.
is more
Do you
so. I
agree?
agree.
Because yeah.
Yeah,
So
it's
I don't
easier on
lean towards
Threads.
those because, you see a video which is completely wrong. And I think, well, what's the point of even making a comment? No one's going to see that. No one's going to see it. It's buried. So
Yeah, I
yeah,
think
Threads is a great place.
Threads, at least the way it is in its current form, maybe in
Yeah,
2 or 3 years I might be saying otherwise, but I think Threads right now it has is quite is good. I'm a fan. It's my favorite
yeah,
social media
me
platform
too.
so far. I'm more of a writer than anything else. I prefer that. So yeah, it's perfect for me, and I do think there was a space for that, like a platform like Threads, at the moment. And I'll leave your Threads profile in the show notes of this podcast episode as well. So
Perfect. Thank
definitely
you.
go and to the listener, definitely go and follow Angela. She posts a lot of good stuff on there. And again, otherwise, thank you so much for making the time to come on, and I appreciate that deeply.
No problems. Have a lovely day, and I'll go and enjoy my evening.